As soon as I saw this article, I hopped over here and I had to make a video. My hat even has the tag hanging out. This is so freaking impromptu. On the day that you do that with DK Bonanza and you show us that it is the glorious, humongous, 3D, incredible Mario Team spinoff that we've been waiting for, that you show us that there's crazy transformations, there's a whole skill tree, there's costumes, customization, and Pauline is a freaking voice acted character. IGN thinks it's a good idea to drop their Switch 2 review and give the system a 7 out of 10. I take extreme issue with this because a 7 out of 10 a 7 out of 10 is something that is just adequate. A 7 out of 10 is not the Nintendo Switch 2. A 7 out of 10 is something that barely gets the job done, and especially from IGN, a 7 out of 10 is effectively a 5 out of 10. The Nintendo Switch 2 is a vital upgrade over the original Switch. If that's the only way you've been able to play games the last 8 years, they're going to do the backhanded compliment thing. It's a vital upgrade. I don't sound like a 7. If that's the only way you've been able to play games the last 8 years. But improvements that are mostly playing catch-up and a big price jump make this sequel system about as exciting as a long overdue phone upgrade in the larger scheme of things. Let me tell you, Tom Marks and IGN, who, endorsed this review here. There has never been a phone upgrade I've got, and I've got a lot of phone upgrades. We've all probably got a lot of phone upgrades. There has never been a phone upgrade I got that had me excited and overjoyed and laughing and smiling and having fun like this. A phone upgrade means that the camera's a little bit better, the screen is a little bit bigger, and maybe they added some weird Apple Intelligence, or they threw the ability to have low power mode and regular power mode so your phone screen can stay on all the time. A phone upgrade does not fundamentally change the way that you are going to enjoy and experience your games. And I think that's where me and IGN just totally differ, because some people out there might argue that the Switch 2 doesn't fundamentally change it because it does not bring about this brand new mechanic. There's no gimmick. There's nothing that it doesn't have the bop it or the twist it, the pull it. They say from the outside the Switch 2 looks almost identical to a slightly scaled up version of Nintendo's original handheld console hybrid system. There is this bias that Nintendo needs to make magic with their new console. Have you seen the Xbox through all the generations? It's the same dang looking console. From the outside, the Xbox looks like the exact same console. From the outside, the PlayStation 4 and 3 and 2 look almost identical, except they got one's rounded, one's a little more angled, one's a little more curved, and the PS5 is freaking gigantic. I just don't like the fact that they're not playing even here. They're not playing fair, in my opinion. And I would argue, from me, someone that actually likes the Switch, that it does fundamentally change it because it's bringing about a level of power, a level of hardware sophistication, a level of memory, RAM, and a level of graphics that were not previously possible. And in an era where video games are facing diminishing returns, meaning the graphics just what's the difference between a PS6 and a PS5? Are they going to put a Bop It on there? You know what the difference is going to be? There's probably going to be a handheld, which Nintendo did first 8 years ago. But in this day and age, the only fundamental difference you have is the ability to make bigger and better games. And Nintendo is making bigger and better games. We've already seen that with Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza. DK Bonanza allows Nintendo to take their trademark style, their trademark fun, and really build upon the mechanics in a way that they previously weren't able to. To me, that's fundamentally altering the way I enjoy my games. Also, a Switch 2 that's much more powerful directly impacts the main thing that I do on this device. So maybe you don't think that the Switch 2 fundamentally changes the game, but it fundamentally improves the main purpose of this device, which is to play games. A new phone does not fundamentally improve texting or calling. A new phone does not fundamentally improve internet browsing. A new phone does not fundamentally improve Twitter or Instagram. It has better stuff, better camera. It's secondary and tertiary features that are improving. It's like the improvement of if only the Switch 2 gave you better sticks, better triggers, and a bigger screen. then that would be the equivalent of a phone. It's not. Let's continue. To cover the physical differences, as much as I really love the convenience and flexibility of being able to use the Joy-Con attached to the screen, detached to play games with my arms relaxed at my side, individually for simple multiplayer games, or snapped onto the included grip, they are still missing analog triggers and they're far from the most comfortable around. True, they're not the most comfortable controller, but they are a hybrid controller. You can't have the most comfortable controller when you're getting a hybrid console. The DualSense is a better controller than the Joy-Con. The Xbox Series controller is a better controller than the Joy-Con. They're both dedicated console TV controllers. Of course. They're talking about the Steam Deck being more ergonomic. I just don't agree. I mean, for me, it does not hurt my fingers. For me, I think it's a better design. I have two Steam Decks, a Steam Deck and a Steam Deck OLED, and I like those devices. I went back and played the Steam Deck OLED just the other day to compare. And I really feel like I personally like the Switch 2 better. Now, obviously, we can have different opinions. That's fine. Talking about mouse controls aren't that big of a deal. Again, this is trying to make mouse controls the big deal, which it's not. We don't really need 3 paragraphs on mouse controls. There's very few games that are supposed to use them. They're kind of bootstrapped onto certain games, but I'd say wait for Metroid Prime 4 if you're going to review that. An extremely innovative idea, but you're apprehensive to use. You don't have to play that way, and it's hard to imagine sitting down with Borderlands 4 later this year and playing an entire FPS campaign with mouse controls, which is a true shame. Is it? It's not a true shame. It's an extra feature that some people are going to implement more than others, and most are not going to implement at all, or if they do, it's going to be tacked on. And I think we're aware that it's tacked on in the way that so many different features throughout so many different console gens have been tacked on. Can we get to something else, right? The first paragraphs are telling me that they don't understand why the system is better because it looks exactly the same. They think the Joy-Con stink, and then I got, how many paragraphs with the mouse? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 paragraphs about the mouse. And look, maybe IGN's trying to look for a different angle. Maybe they realize they're like 10 days late with this thing, 13 days late. They're trying to figure out a way that they can cover this console in a different way. It's just not doing it for me. 6 paragraphs on the mouse controls that I've used to mess around on the menu in a hidden features video I made for everybody. That's the only time I cared about the mouse. I don't need 6 paragraphs. Okay. They're talking about the jump from a 720p resolution, 1080p is a big one, and the doubled 120 FPS cap is some very welcome icing on that cake whenever a game can take advantage of it. Those improvements shouldn't be understated, but the move back to LCD does mean the screen doesn't perform quite as well outdoors and on the go compared to an OLED Switch. It's still a good-looking screen with pretty solid speakers to accompany it, and I was able to play Mario Kart on a sunny day in the park with no visibility problems, but a darker game like Cyberpunk was impossible to make out at all times. All in all, it feels like a bit of a wash depending on your play habits and priorities, but since we've been forced to choose, I'm personally happy with the resolution and frame rate bump. Okay, so he's giving the LCD screen props, saying that there's some outdoor issues. I'm fine with that. That's totally reasonable. The upped output, in 4K. Could get pretty hot to the touch when you were playing games with 4K. Why were you touching it when you're playing on the TV in 4K? Why were you touching the Switch 2? Okay. This is where we start to peek inside the system because the Switch 2's ability to run games like Tears of the Kingdom with improved resolution and zero lag is probably the biggest selling point for anybody who'd been feeling the Switch 1's age more and more, who cried out for the Switch Pro. If you've only ever gamed on the original Switch, the upgrade here is substantial. Okay, you're telling me that if someone had a PS5, they couldn't tell the upgrade between the Switch 1 and the Switch 2? You're telling me that if someone had only played PC games, they couldn't tell the difference between the Switch 1 and Switch 2? Only if you've ever gamed on the Switch, the original Switch, in the last 8 years, then it's substantial. They're saying backwards compatibility is great to see, I agree. Compare the CD Projekt Red game. The Switch 2 is never going to threaten the PlayStation 5 Pro in terms of raw power, but it's a whole new world as far as third-party support is concerned. Hopefully, it will be a little while before major third-party games start skipping Nintendo's platform. That to me sounds like a really, really important deal, but apparently to them it's not. It's like a phone upgrade. This is the one. That said, if you have gamed on devices besides the Switch 1 since 2017, the technical upgrade here is not exactly what I would call exciting in the larger scheme of things. Dude! It's a hybrid console. It's a handheld. Hybrid. Console. The Switch 2 is Nintendo playing catch-up, and things like HDR and 4K haven't been thrilling new features for over half a decade. It's a handheld. Hybrid. Console. They're great to finally have, don't get me wrong, and games on the Switch 2 no longer feel stranded on a console that was underpowered even when it first came out. And yet there's a part of me that worries we'll be right back to begging for a Switch 2 Pro when the PlayStation 6 inevitably arrives in a few years' time, because this one still hasn't fully closed the gap with the console that launched back in 2020. It's a hybrid, handheld console. How was it going to close the gaps? I don't think that that's possible. Did you want a $900 Switch 2? Did you want a $1,200 Switch 2? This just, to me, reads as ill-informed. This, to me, reads as a straw man argument where you're telling me that the Switch 2 isn't as good as the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series X, but it's a hybrid, handheld console. You know what I'm saying? How are you gonna hate on it and say that it's so underpowered without directly acknowledging the reason that it's so underpowered? By the way, I don't think it's so underpowered. I think my experience with Cyberpunk 2077 on the Switch 2 is just great. I think Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom look just great. Talking about Pokemon games got a big boost. Breath of the Wild got a great boost. Console-defining games got a great boost. Oh, there's another thing. Console-defining games. This paragraph doesn't really want to talk about that more than one sentence, but you know what's a really important part of a new console? The games that you can play on it. And I understand that the lineup has started off a little slow, but if we're going to look ahead, because IGN wants to look ahead, right? Right here I can show you that they want to look ahead because they're talking about in a few years when the PlayStation 6 comes out. Let's look ahead to what Nintendo can do. Because I think there's been a problem with Xbox and PlayStation that they haven't really put out a ton of games year over year. And that there's some years where it feels like they just go MIA. There's some years where they do put out pretty good output. And then there's a lot of years where it's just sort of like so-so. Nintendo is going to have an amazing output just for the Switch 2 every single year, except maybe the last one or two. So for the next 5 years, you're going to get an incredible Nintendo-driven exclusive lineup on this system. And this review doesn't want to talk about that. It doesn't want to acknowledge it. It wants to focus on game chat, and it wants to focus on the mice like we've never experienced Nintendo before, and we don't understand that they're adding these features on to put more check marks in the back of the box. But the real deal here is that this is the equivalent of a PS3 to a PS4, or a PS4 to a PS5. It's giving you a power upgrade, which is totally okay with every other console manufacturer, but for Nintendo, that is a 7 out of 10. That is not enough. This does not feel like a whole new bike. Does the PS5 feel like a whole new bike? It didn't to me. I played Spider-Man on my PS4 and I played Miles Morales on my PS5. And I was like, oh, it looks a little nicer. It did not feel like a whole new bike. Did the Xbox Series X feel like a whole new bike? It definitely didn't, because there was nothing to play on it. I could play the same game that I was already playing on my last gen Xbox, because the same games came out and they didn't have exclusives. The big additions are things like game chat. It's hilariously overdue. Can't rearrange the home screen. Still won't support YouTube. And uses an obnoxious friend code system. Okay. Game chat isn't great. The mouse isn't great. And you can't watch Crunchyroll. What is this? Is this a phone? Are we reviewing a phone? I don't understand. This is a gaming console. So does it play the games better? Because that's what the PlayStation 5 does. That's what a new Xbox does. That's what those consoles have done new for ages. When was the last time a Sony console or an Xbox console had a gimmick? Oh, it was the Xbox Kinect and the PlayStation Eye, and both of those failed. Both of those got phased out quite quickly, and both of those were money-losing schemes that started off hot and fizzled very fast. Because who are they trying to chase? Nintendo, with motion control. I'm a little bitter here because I love my PS5. Dude, I love my PS5. Expedition 33 is something I've been playing. The Alters is something I've been playing. I'm playing a lot on my PS5. I'm playing a lot even on my Xbox. Doom the Dark Ages has been phenomenal. FBC Firebreak is on Game Pass. I like these consoles a ton. I love them. But I'm not going to go crap on Nintendo just because it's Nintendo. This kind of incremental system upgrade isn't necessarily a bad thing in a vacuum, but it stands out to me when this console is a whopping $449. Playing big games like Mario Kart World, Cyberpunk 2077, or Civilization 7 on the go, I've yet to make it far past the 2.5 hour mark without having to plug in. Pair that with only a single launch exclusive worth playing, and apart from revisiting games There's not much that's got me actively excited to play Switch 2. That will surely change when the phenomenal-looking Donkey Kong Bonanza and other new games start to arrive, but for now this launch feels a bit subdued, okay? So then, you're telling me that we can just erase this paragraph where you're talking about worrying about the future, because now you're saying that the future is going to make it better, but we're not going to add that into the score. I just feel like this is messy. I don't feel like it's a very well thought out review. I don't feel like it adds up. I don't feel like I feel like there's a narrative that they were trying to drive home here, that the Switch 2 is boring and overpriced because they thought that people would want to hear that, even though clearly they don't, because the Switch 2 set records as the fastest selling console ever. Clearly it's not boring, and clearly it's not so overpriced. And compared to other handheld portables, it's very fairly priced. And you're getting all the Nintendo games. The Nintendo Switch 2 is a Switch, but bigger and better in every sense. I'm going to read that again. The Nintendo Switch 2 is a Switch, but bigger and better in every sense. We could say the exact same thing about every other console. The PS5 is a PlayStation 4, but bigger and better in every sense. The Xbox Series X is an Xbox One X, but bigger and better in every sense. Isn't that what those consoles are? Your new PC with your new graphics card is a PC, your old PC, but bigger and better in every sense. What is a new console? Do you need to, like, Jack in the Box have Mario pop out the top? Does Miyamoto need to come and rub your feet? What would make this a viable upgrade to you? A lot of its best games benefit massively from the beefier tech inside that allows for 4K, higher frame rates, and faster load times. But all that feels like Nintendo getting back to treading water when you have to pay 50% more for this upgrade, but we're going to ignore inflation because it's really not that much more. The updated Joy-Con take an impressively creative swing. They're ergonomically uncomfortable. The end result is a console I really like for all the same reasons I love the original Switch, but one that's also left me strangely underwhelmed after actually spending time with it. It's a step up that's vital if the Switch 1 is the only way to play games on that you have access to, but feels about as exciting as a long overdue phone upgrade. It doesn't. If you don't have a Switch 2, as soon as you hold this thing, you'll be like, this is not a new phone. If anybody has gone from iPhone 13 to 14, 14 to 15, 15 to 16, 12 to 13, any of these, 13 to 15, 14 to 16, you know it's not exciting. You know you try to make yourself feel excited because you just dropped big money or changed your plan or re-upped your plan. It's not exciting. They got 3 cameras instead of 2. They got freaking ionized aluminum. They've got a faster processor for the games that you'll never play. Guess what? You can play Assassin's Creed on your phone. No one's going to do it. A phone upgrade is very boring. A long overdue phone upgrade, that could be cool. If you're going from the iPhone 5 to the iPhone 16, you might be like, hot diggity dog, this is great. And if you go from the Switch 1 to the Switch 2, you'll also say this is great. So which is it? Is it as exciting as a long overdue phone upgrade, or is it not exciting? I don't really know. But you're giving it a 7. I could keep going. I think this is a very messy, very review. I don't think it really is. If he had legitimate problems, I'm okay with them. They can give it a 3 if they have legitimate problems. If their Switch 2 kept crashing, if they're running into issues, if they, I don't know, if the games looked terrible, if the controllers were drifting and breaking, give it a low score. But the reason for this 7 is that it's the same type of console generation transition and upgrade that Microsoft and Sony have been doing for years. But because it's Nintendo, we're going to give them bad marks, and we're going to consider the future for how it might eventually become underpowered and lose third-party support, but we're not going to consider the future when we talk about how it might get and will get all these exclusives that these other consoles don't have, and that have been fewer and far between in this generation than ever before. I don't know. This made me really frustrated. Let me know what you're taking in the comments down below, everybody. I'm over it. Like, it's an IGN 7, but I just think it's a poorly formulated review, and I wanted to go through it with you. Like, Switch 2 reviews, I'm glad they took their time, but I feel like at the same time, you wasted a lot of that time just playing with the mouse for 6 paragraphs. 6 paragraphs on the mouse. What do you review for the Switch 2? You review how it's a better console than the last generation, in the same way that the PlayStation 5 is a better console than the last generation. And you can review the games if you want. Maybe you should talk a little bit more about the games. You're basically saying every game from the past is better, and the new games are great, but the console is a 7. I don't get it. What the heck, IGN? Let me know your take in the comments down below, everybody. Does this review bug you? You think it's fair? Would you give your Switch 2 a 7? Let me know in the comments down below, and until next time, everybody, on the day of DK. How dare you, Tom Marks? How dare you? Appreciate all y'all. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, stay positive out there. Love you lots. SwitchForce out.